Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey that will tie us, quite literally, to the fascinating intricacies of daily life in a bygone era. Imagine yourself standing on the cobbled streets of a medieval town, the air thick with the smells of wood smoke and damp earth, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoing through the narrow alleys. You adjust your footing, perhaps on a patch of uneven ground, and glance down at your shoes. Not the sleek, factory-produced footwear you know today, but something far more personal, far more indicative of its time. You probably won't survive this journey unscathed, at least not in your modern sensibilities. The mud, the smells, the general lack of modern conveniences. It's a stark contrast to your climate-controlled existence. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself transported, a silent observer in a bustling marketplace. The year is, let's say, 1250. Around you, merchants haggle over wool and spices, children chase a stray dog, and the general cacophony of medieval life swirls. Your gaze, however, is drawn to the feet of the people passing by. You notice a striking variety of footwear, from simple, unadorned hide boots to more elaborate, pointed poolings. But what truly captures your attention, what seems so utterly alien yet so utterly fundamental, are the laces. Or rather, the lack thereof in many cases, and the surprisingly diverse methods used to secure shoes to feet. This isn't just about a simple knot. It's a story of social status, practical necessity, and even fashion. You see a man in a simple tunic, his feet encased in what appear to be turned shoes, soft, pliable leather sewn inside out and then turned right side out, making the seams less prone to wear. These are often secured with a simple toggle or, for more basic versions, just a flap of leather that tucks in. No laces here, not in the sense you understand them. It's a bit like trying to put on a sock with a drawstring. You'd be surprised how effective it can be when you're not trying to run a marathon. Then your eyes fall upon a wealthier merchant, his attire more refined, his shoes of a finer leather clearly dyed. These shoes, you observe, feature small, intricately carved wooden or bone points, what historians call points or aiglettes, at the ends of thin leather thongs. These are the earliest ancestors of the shoelace as we know it, but they aren't laced through eyelets in the modern fashion. Instead, they are often threaded through slits in the leather or wrapped around the ankle and tied. It's a delicate dance, a bit like trying to tie a ribbon on a particularly wriggly kitten. You wonder how long it takes to secure them properly each morning. Imagine the frustration if one of those precious eyelets snapped off. Would you have to walk around with a flopping shoe all day? The thought is enough to make you sigh. Historians still argue about the precise origins of these early lacing methods. Was it purely for practical purposes, to keep mud out and warmth in? Or was there an element of decorative flair from the very beginning? Some scholars lean towards practicality, noting the harsh realities of medieval roads, while others point to illuminated manuscripts depicting elaborate bows and decorative knots. It's a surprisingly deep rabbit hole, considering it's just about something that holds your shoe on. You chuckle to yourself, thinking how much easier it is to just slip on your sneakers. One common misconception, you realize, is that everyone in the Middle Ages walked around in big, clunky wooden clogs. While clogs existed, especially for laborers in wet conditions, the reality is that leather was the dominant material for everyday footwear, and the variety of styles and fastenings was far greater than you might imagine. It's like saying everyone in the 21st century wears Crocs. You might see a few, but certainly not everyone. You notice a young woman, perhaps a servant, her shoes a simple, unadorned design, secured with a basic thong tied in a simple knot. There's no elaborate embellishment, no pretense, just pure functionality. It's a testament to the ingenuity of the time, making do with what was available and creating solutions that, while rudimentary by modern standards, were perfectly adequate for their purpose. You can almost feel the smooth, worn leather against your own foot. The transition from simple thongs and toggles to more sophisticated lacing systems wasn't an abrupt shift. It was a slow, evolutionary crawl, much like the development of the medieval road itself, going from a muddy track to something slightly less muddy. You continue your observation, stepping through the bustling market, trying to remain unnoticed. You notice that as you move from the common folk to the more affluent sections of the town, the complexity of footwear and its fastenings increases. This isn't just about keeping shoes on. It's about signaling status, about showcasing wealth, about a subtle form of sartorial peacocking. You see a nobleman, his robes rich with embroidery, his shoes, possibly made of softer, more expensive leather like kid skin, secured with multiple rows of delicate lacing. These aren't just single thongs. They are woven through small, reinforced holes, sometimes with metal eyelets, though these are still a rarity and usually reserved for the very highest echelons of society. It's almost like a corset for your feet, a painstaking process that likely required the assistance of a valet. You can almost hear him muttering under his breath about the sheer amount of time it takes to get ready in the morning. This intricate lacing served not only to secure the shoe, but also as a decorative element. Imagine trying to tie such an elaborate system with cold, numb fingers on a winter morning. You'd probably just give up and walk around barefoot, or just wear a simpler pair. One quirky tidbit: during certain periods, particularly the 14th century, the length of the pointed toe, known as a poulain or crackle, became an extreme fashion statement. Some poulains were so long they had to be supported by whalebone, or even tied up to the wearer's knee. You can only imagine trying to navigate a crowded street with a foot extension that long. Lacing these extended shoes presented a particular challenge, as the lacing often had to account for the extreme length, sometimes even incorporating decorative lacing along the top of the foot to complement the dramatic silhouette. Historians still debate the precise socioeconomic factors that led to the extreme pooling trend. Was it a defiant display of wealth by the aristocracy, or a more subtle form of social climbing by the aspiring gentry? Some scholars suggest it was a playful rejection of practicality, a way to show you didn't need to work. You see a young apprentice, his shoes a more robust, practical design, clearly made for hard wear. These are secured with thicker leather thongs, simply tied in a bow. No fancy aglets here, no delicate weaving, just pure, unadulterated functionality. It's a refreshing change from the elaborate displays you've been observing. You might even call it refreshingly boring. The evolution of these lacing techniques is deeply intertwined with advancements in leatherworking and shoemaking. As tools improved and tanners became more skilled, they could produce thinner, more pliable leathers, allowing for more intricate designs and smaller, more precise perforations for lacing. Before this, the leather was simply too thick and stiff to allow for delicate lacing. Imagine trying to thread a needle through a piece of cardboard. That's sort of what it would have been like. This allowed shoemakers to experiment with different patterns of lacing, moving beyond simple crisscross designs to more elaborate, decorative arrangements that could be as much about aesthetics as about function. It's like the difference between a simple knot and a fancy bow. One mainstream historical fact is that the Middle Ages were not a static period. Footwear, like all aspects of fashion, underwent significant changes over the centuries, reflecting shifts in technology, social norms, and cultural influences. From the relatively simple turn shoes of the early medieval period to the more structured and often laced footwear of the later centuries, each era left its mark. The lacing, though seemingly a minor detail, tells a rich story within this larger narrative. You notice a shoe with what appears to be a very early form of a buckle, a rudimentary metal clasp that fastens a strap across the instep. This is another method of securing footwear that coexisted with lacing and would eventually, in many styles, supersede it. But for now, the focus remains on the myriad ways to tie a shoe. You can almost hear the soft creak of the leather as someone walks by. As you continue your silent perambulation through the medieval town, the air now carries the faint scent of baking bread, a comforting aroma amidst the general medieval musk. Your attention remains fixed on the ground, specifically on the feet of the people around you. You're beginning to notice a pattern, a subtle distinction between the functional and the fashionable when it comes to shoelaces. It's almost like a secret language spoken through footwear. You see a group of pilgrims, their sturdy boots well worn from travel. These boots are typically secured with robust leather thongs, often wrapped multiple times around the ankle and tied with a strong knot. There's no pretense here, just pure, unadulterated practicality designed to withstand long journeys and unforgiving terrain. You wouldn't want your shoe to come undone mid-pilgrimage, especially not if you were walking through a particularly mucky field. Imagine having to stop every few miles to retie a flimsy bow. The thought alone is exhausting. In contrast, you observe members of the emerging merchant class, individuals who are gaining wealth but perhaps not yet the inherited status of the nobility. Their shoes often feature more refined lacing, perhaps with small, decorative metal eyelets, or with lacing patterns that are slightly more intricate than a simple crisscross. It's a subtle flex, a way of saying, "I'm doing well, but I'm not trying to outshine the Duke." It's like choosing a slightly fancier shoelace color on your sneakers. It's a small detail that communicates something. One quirky tidbit about medieval shoemaking is the role of the cordwainer. This term, derived from Cordovan leather, a high-quality leather originally from Cordoba, Spain, referred specifically to shoemakers who worked with new leather, in contrast to cobblers who mended shoes. So, if you wanted a truly fashionable, expertly laced pair of shoes, you go to a cordwainer. You wouldn't trust your new, expensive shoes to someone who just repaired old ones. Historians still debate the extent to which sumptuary laws regulating clothing and consumption based on social class, influenced the evolution of shoelaces. While some laws explicitly dictated what materials could be worn by different classes, the subtle nuances of lacing styles were harder to legislate, creating a fascinating gray area for fashion expression. It was a kind of loophole for the fashion conscious. You ponder how frustrating it must have been to have your footwear choices dictated by your social standing. The development of the eyelet in the modern sense was a gradual process. Early lacing holes were simply punched through the leather, which meant they could tear and stretch over time, leading to loose laces and floppy shoes. This is where those early eyelets came in handy. They helped to protect the end of the thong and made it easier to thread through the sometimes frayed holes. Imagine trying to push a piece of string through a hole that's getting bigger every time you use it. Eventually, reinforced eyelets, sometimes stitched with strong linen thread or even small metal rings, began to appear. This innovation was a game changer, allowing for much more secure and durable lacing. One mainstream historical fact is that the urban centers of the Middle Ages, with their growing populations and burgeoning economies, were hotbeds of innovation in various crafts, including shoemaking. The demand for new styles and better quality goods spurred artisans to refine their techniques, leading to advances in everything from leather tanning to the intricacies of shoe fastenings. You see a young noblewoman, her gown sweeping the ground, her tiny, elegant shoes barely visible beneath the hem. But you catch a glimpse of delicate silk ribbons used as laces, tied in an elaborate bow. This is clearly for show, a decorative flourish rather than a purely functional one. It's the equivalent of wearing a bow tie on your feet. You almost expect them to have tiny little bells on them. You can practically hear the rustle of her expensive fabrics as she moves. The air is cooler now, a gentle breeze rustling through the eaves of the half-timbered houses, carrying with it the faint, sweet scent of newly mown hay from beyond the town walls. You continue your silent observation, focusing on the dynamic relationship between shoe design and the evolving nature of shoelaces. It's not just about how you tie them, it's about what you're tying them to. The medieval shoe itself underwent significant transformations, and with each new style came a reconsideration of how best to secure it to the foot. For instance, you notice the prevalence of the turnshoe construction for much of the early and high Middle Ages. These shoes, as you recall, were sewn inside out and then turned, resulting in a soft, supple shoe with concealed seams. Lacing on these often involved simple slits or loops rather than punched holes, allowing for the leather to remain smooth and flexible. It was a very organic, almost skin-like fit. As the centuries progressed, particularly into the later medieval period, a new construction method gained popularity: the welted shoe. This technique involved stitching the upper to a strip of leather, the welt, which was then stitched to the sole. This resulted in a sturdier, more rigid shoe, more resilient to wear and tear. With this increased rigidity, more defined lacing holes became feasible, and the use of metal eyelets, though still rare and often made of brass or even silver for the wealthy, began to become more common. This was a significant leap, moving from delicate, soft lacing to something far more robust. You can almost feel the difference in stiffness and structure between the two types of shoes. A quirky tidbit: some medieval shoes, particularly those worn by soldiers or travelers, incorporated multiple methods of fastening. You might see a combination of lacing, buckles, and even straps to ensure maximum security during vigorous activity. Imagine trying to untie all of that in a hurry. It would be like trying to escape a particularly complex knot. You can imagine a knight trying to get his boots off after a long day of battle, perhaps needing a squire to assist him. Historians still debate the primary driver behind the shift from turnshoes to welted shoes. Was it purely practical, offering greater durability, or did it also reflect a changing aesthetic preference for a more structured, tailored look? Some scholars argue for practicality, given the increasing demands on footwear in urban environments, while others suggest the growing influence of tailoring and fitted garments led to a desire for more form-fitting shoes. You see a group of soldiers, their gait purposeful, their boots heavy and utilitarian. These are clearly built for function, not fashion. The lacing on their boots is simple, often a basic crisscross through punched holes, designed for quick tightening and release. There are no fancy aglets, no delicate bows, just strong, practical knots. It's the equivalent of tactical boots today. You can almost smell the leather and the dust from their journey. One mainstream historical fact is that the availability of materials significantly impacted shoemaking practices throughout the Middle Ages. Leather, primarily from cattle, sheep, and goats, was the dominant material, but its quality and availability varied. The best leathers were reserved for the wealthy, while poorer quality hides were used for the footwear of the common folk. This disparity in materials naturally influenced the types of lacing that could be employed. A flimsy lace on a sturdy boot would be pointless. You observe a cobbler at his stall, surrounded by tools and scraps of leather. He is meticulously repairing a shoe, rethreading a worn leather thong through newly reinforced holes. He uses a small awl, a sharp, pointed tool, to pierce the leather with precision. This everyday scene underscores the importance of shoemaking and shoe repair in medieval society. A good pair of shoes was a valuable possession, and keeping them in good repair, including their laces, was essential. You notice he has a small box of various leather thongs, ready to be cut and used as replacement laces. It's like a medieval haberdashery, but for your feet. The sounds of the medieval town begin to soften as the afternoon sun casts longer shadows. You find yourself drifting through the quieter lanes, where the focus shifts from the grand displays of the marketplace to the subtle details of everyday life. And in this realm, the evolution of medieval shoelaces continues to reveal its nuanced story. You begin to appreciate the sheer ingenuity involved in keeping a shoe on a foot without the benefit of modern fasteners. The solutions were often elegant in their simplicity, born of necessity and crafted with the tools at hand. You observe a child, no older than 7 or 8, playing with a wooden toy. His shoes are simple, almost slipper-like, secured with a single loop of leather that threads through a slit and then tucks under itself. It's a design that's easy for small hands to manage, something that wouldn't frustrate a busy parent trying to get their offspring dressed. You imagine the child's parents appreciating the ease of putting these on and taking them off. One of the most fascinating aspects of medieval shoelaces is their occasional transformation into purely decorative elements, especially among the fashionable elite. While practicality remained paramount for the majority, for those with leisure and wealth, the lace could become a canvas for artistic expression. You might see laces woven with threads of contrasting colors, or even embellished with tiny beads or precious metals. This was a far cry from the simple thongs of the common laborer. It's like comparing a plain white shoelace to one woven with glitter. One quirky tidbit: the very word aglet comes from the Old French aiguillette, meaning a small needle, reflecting their original purpose as a stiffened tip for laces. These aglets could be incredibly elaborate, fashioned from silver, gold, or even carved ivory, adding a touch of luxury to even the simplest lacing. Historians still debate the extent to which sumptuary laws, which aim to regulate dress based on social status, influence the decorative aspects of shoelaces. While some laws might have restricted the use of certain precious metals, the sheer variety and artistry in aglet design suggests that people found creative ways to express their status, even in small details. It was a constant game of cat and mouse between fashion and regulation. You think of how people today try to find loopholes in dress codes. The practice F points, or laces, was also common for securing garments, not just shoes. Doublets, for example, were often laced to hose. This widespread use of lacing in general clothing meant that the skills and materials for shoelaces were readily available and understood. It was a universal language of fastening. One mainstream historical fact is that the medieval period saw significant advancements in textile production, which indirectly impacted the development of shoelaces. As more sophisticated threads and narrow fabrics became available, it opened up new possibilities for creating durable and decorative laces. Linen and silk, for instance, offered different properties than leather thongs, allowing for finer, more intricate lacing patterns. You see a traveling minstrel, his attire a little worn but still colorful. His shoes are a practical, ankle-high style, secured with thick, braided linen cords. These cords, though not as elaborate as silk, offer excellent durability and a rustic charm. They look like they could withstand a good bit of road. You can almost hear the soft thrum of his lute as he walks by. You consider the amount of time people must have spent maintaining their footwear, cleaning the mud, softening the leather, and ensuring the laces were strong and intact. It was a daily ritual, far removed from the ease of simply tossing a worn-out pair and buying new ones. Every item of clothing, especially shoes, was an investment and cared for accordingly. The evening air is beginning to settle, bringing with it a faint chill that encourages you to imagine yourself closer to a warm hearth. But your journey through the evolution of medieval shoelaces continues, leading you to consider the sheer variety of methods that existed beyond the simple tie. The medieval period was a crucible of ingenuity, and even something as seemingly mundane as shoe fastening became a canvas for diverse solutions. You observe a particularly well-dressed individual, perhaps a visiting scholar, whose shoes feature what appears to be a form of cross-gartering. This isn't just about lacing the shoe itself, but about extending the laces or straps up the leg, often crisscrossing over the calf and tying just below the knee. This method offered extra support, especially for higher boots, and also added a distinctive aesthetic element. It's like having built-in leggings attached to your shoes. You wonder how comfortable that would be after a long day. This practice of cross-gartering is a fascinating example of how shoelaces could merge with other forms of legwear. It blurred the lines between the shoe and the hosiery, creating a seamless, often decorative look. Imagine trying to get a perfectly even crisscross on both legs every morning. It would require a good eye and a lot of patience. One quirky tidbit: some medieval medical texts mention various ailments related to ill-fitting shoes, including issues with laces that were too tight or too loose, causing chafing or poor circulation. This highlights the practical importance of proper lacing for comfort and health, even in an era without podiatrists. You can almost feel the uncomfortable pinch of a too tight lace. Historians still debate the regional variations in lacing styles across Europe. While general trends can be observed, different regions likely developed their own preferred methods and decorative motifs, influenced by local materials, climate, and cultural aesthetics. Was there a distinct English lacing style versus a French one? The evidence is often sparse, leaving room for scholarly speculation. It's like trying to pinpoint the exact origin of a regional accent. The advent of more structured footwear, moving away from the soft, pliable turn shoes, significantly impacted the design of shoelaces. As shoes became more rigid and often had distinct uppers and soles, the lacing had to adapt to these new forms. You see a shoe with a gusseted tongue, a piece of leather sewn into the opening of the shoe to keep out debris and water. This innovation, while practical, also meant that the lacing had to pass over this tongue, influencing the placement and design of the eyelets. It's like adding an extra flap to your shoe and then trying to tie it over that. One mainstream historical fact is that the materials used for shoelaces varied widely based on availability and cost. While leather thongs were common, particularly for everyday wear, finer shoes might feature laces made of braided linen, silk, or even finely spun wool. The choice of material reflected the wearer's status and the intended purpose of the shoe. A silk lace on a muddy boot would be rather impractical. You observe a group of peasants, their footwear rudimentary, often consisting of simply wrapped pieces of hide or very basic turn shoes. Their laces are often just strips of leather cut directly from the hide, tied in the simplest of knots. There's an undeniable honesty in their footwear, a direct connection to the raw materials and the immediate need for protection. It's a testament to how necessity breeds invention, or at least simplicity. You can almost hear the soft shuffle of their feet on the dirt path. The moon begins to cast its pale glow over the imagined medieval rooftops, and the sounds of the town have dwindled to the gentle murmuring of the wind. Your focus remains on the ground, on the subtle, yet profound, changes in how people secured their footwear. The story of medieval shoelaces is, in many ways, a microcosm of the larger story of human ingenuity and adaptation. You find yourself considering the role of specialized tools in the evolution of lacing. While early holes were likely just punched with a sharp stick or bone, as shoemaking became a more refined craft, specialized awls and punches with different sizes and shapes would have been developed. These tools allowed for more precise and consistent eyelets, making lacing easier and more durable. It's the difference between hammering a nail with a rock and using a proper hammer. One quirky tidbit is the concept of false lacing, or purely decorative lacing, that had no functional purpose in securing the shoe. Sometimes, a shoe might be primarily fastened with a buckle or strap, but still feature rows of lacing that were purely ornamental, sewn onto the surface of the leather. This was a clear sign of status and fashion, a way to add visual interest without the hassle of actual tying. It's like the fake pockets on some modern clothing. They're there for the look, not for practicality. You can almost imagine someone meticulously hand-stitching these decorative laces onto an already expensive shoe. Historians still debate the extent to which trade routes influenced the spread of lacing styles and technologies across Europe. Did specific lacing patterns originate in one region and then travel along merchant routes? Or did similar solutions arise independently in different places due to shared practical needs? The interconnectedness of medieval trade is a complex web, and its influence on footwear fashion is a fascinating area of inquiry. It's like tracing the journey of a popular song across different cultures. You see a pair of child's shoes, clearly handmade, with oversized wooden toggles as fasteners. These toggles would have been easy for small hands to grasp and manipulate, a thoughtful design choice for parents who likely had their hands full with many other tasks. It's a reminder that even in the absence of modern conveniences, practical solutions were sought and found. One mainstream historical fact is that throughout the Middle Ages, shoemakers were often part of powerful guilds. These guilds regulated the quality of materials, the training of apprentices, and the techniques used in shoemaking. This standardization, to some extent, would have influenced the consistency of lacing practices and the quality of laces themselves. A guild-certified shoemaker would have been expected to produce a high-quality product, right down to the laces. You observe a bustling shoemaker's workshop, the rhythmic tapping of hammers on leather, the scent of fresh hide filling the air. You see an apprentice carefully punching holes into a piece of leather for a new shoe. He uses a small, sharp punch, his movements precise and practiced. The holes are evenly spaced, a testament to the skill being passed down through generations. You can almost feel the tension in his hands as he works. You consider how many hours of painstaking labor went into each pair of shoes, each lace, each tiny detail. It was a craft, an art form imbued with human effort and skill. The stillness of the medieval night deepens, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. You continue your internal wanderings, tracing the subtle shifts in shoelace technology through the centuries. It's remarkable how a seemingly minor element like a shoelace can tell such a rich story about social stratification, practical needs, and the relentless march of fashion. You begin to consider the cultural significance of the shoelace, beyond its mere function. In some contexts, the act of lacing or unlacing could have held symbolic meaning. For instance, tightly laced shoes might have been associated with a rigid social posture, while loosely laced ones might have suggested a more relaxed or informal demeanor. It's like how untied shoelaces today might signify a certain rebellious attitude, or just a lazy one. You notice the evolution of the tongue in shoes, that flap of material under the laces that protects the foot. Early shoes often lacked a distinct tongue, relying on overlapping flaps or simple lacing over the foot. As shoes became more structured, and as the desire for better protection from the elements grew, a separate tongue was often incorporated. This addition naturally influenced the lacing, as the laces now had to pass over this raised section. It was a subtle but important design change. One quirky tidbit during certain periods, particularly the 15th century, the fashion for very high-cut boots or shoes meant that lacing often extended quite far up the ankle or even onto the lower leg. These boots might have dozens of eyelets, requiring a considerable amount of lacing and a fair bit of time to put on and take off. Imagine trying to get those off after a long day, especially if your feet had swollen. You'd probably just sleep in them. Historians still debate the precise influence of military footwear on civilian lacing styles. Did the sturdy, practical lacing of soldiers' boots inspire similar trends in civilian life, or did civilian fashion influence military designs? The interplay between military and civilian fashion is a constant theme throughout history, and footwear is no exception. It's a chicken or egg question, but for shoes. You see a child's simple leather boot, clearly made for walking in the mud and muck. The lacing is rudimentary, a single, thick leather thong threaded through a few large, roughly punched holes. It's durable and functional, designed to withstand the rigors of childhood play. There's no pretense, just pure utility. It's the equivalent of a modern Wellington boot. One mainstream historical fact is that the availability of dyes and pigments also played a role in the aesthetics of shoelaces. While many laces would have been the natural color of the material, leather, linen, etc., wealthier individuals might have had laces dyed to match their garments or to create a striking contrast. Imagine a pair of dark red silk laces on a pair of black leather shoes, a subtle but impactful statement. You observe a group of laborers working on a building site, their shoes practical and robust. Their laces are thick and strong, designed to hold up to the demands of physical labor. You notice one man, perhaps a carpenter, whose laces are tied in a particularly tight double knot, ensuring his shoes won't come loose while he's working on a precarious scaffolding. It's a small detail, but one that speaks volumes about the practical needs of the time. You can almost hear the rhythmic thud of their tools. The silence of the medieval night is almost absolute now, a hushed canvas against which your thoughts about medieval shoelaces continue to unfold. You're beginning to grasp the sheer diversity and cleverness embedded in what might, at first glance, seem like a trivial detail. The way a shoe is fastened speaks volumes about the wearer's life, their status, and the prevailing trends of their time. You start to think about the ritual of putting on shoes in the Middle Ages. For the wealthy, it might have been a mourning ceremony, with valets assisting in the intricate lacing of elaborate footwear. For the common person, it was a quicker, more functional act, but still a daily routine. It's a small, intimate interaction with an object that saw them through their entire day. You consider the material evolution of the laces themselves. While leather thongs were undoubtedly the most common, especially for durable everyday wear, the pursuit of comfort and luxury led to other innovations. The use of spun fibers like linen and wool for laces offered a softer feel against the foot and allowed for finer, more decorative braiding. Silk, for the truly opulent, brought unparalleled smoothness and richness of color. Imagine the delicate feel of silk laces compared to a rough leather thong. One quirky tidbit about medieval shoelaces involves the concept of points, not just as metal tips, but as separate items of dress that could be detached and reattached. Sometimes, a shoe would have eyelets, but the actual lace was a separate point that could be removed when not needed, or swapped out for a different color or material. This offered a level of modularity that you might not expect. It's like having interchangeable shoelaces. Historians still debate the precise timeline for the widespread adoption of metal eyelets. While early forms appeared in the later medieval period, their use remained somewhat limited due to the expense and manufacturing difficulty. Was it the availability of better metalworking techniques that drove their adoption, or an increasing demand for more durable lacing? The answer likely lies in a complex interplay of both factors. You see a pair of ceremonial shoes, perhaps for a wedding or a feast, beautifully crafted from fine leather and adorned with intricate embroidery. The laces on these shoes are not merely functional. They are an integral part of the artistic design, perhaps even woven with gold or silver threads. These are shoes meant to be admired, not just walked in. It's like wearing jewelry on your feet. One mainstream historical fact is that the term shoelace itself, or variations of it, only became common much later. Throughout the medieval period, people would have referred to them as points, thongs, ties, or simply laces. The language reflects the developing nadir. Of the fastening mechanism. You observe a bustling market stall where a vendor is selling various small haberdashery items: needles, threads, buttons, and, of course, lengths of leather thongs and braided cords suitable for laces. This demonstrates that laces weren't always made by the shoemaker themselves. They could be purchased separately, allowing for some customization. It's like buying your shoelaces from a specialty store today. You can almost hear the quiet rustle of the fabrics and the soft clinking of the small metal items. The quiet hum of the night is almost a lullaby, and your mind continues its gentle exploration of the subtle yet significant world of medieval shoelaces. You've journeyed through their basic function, their role in status, and their material evolution. Now, let's consider the impact of cultural exchange on their design. The Middle Ages were far from isolated. Trade, pilgrimage, and conflict brought different cultures into contact, and with them, an exchange of ideas, including those related to fashion and footwear. You imagine a merchant arriving from the East, his boots perhaps featuring a lacing style previously unseen in Western Europe. The intricate knots or decorative elements might spark interest and imitation, leading to new trends. It's like discovering a new fashion trend on social media, but much slower and more impactful. You consider the practicalities of repair. A broken shoelace was a daily inconvenience, easily remedied for the common person with a spare piece of leather or strong twine. But for the wealthy, a broken silk lace or a lost aglet would require the attention of a skilled artisan, someone who could mend the delicate material or replace the intricate tip. This difference in repair capabilities highlights the varying relationships people had with their possessions based on their social standing. Imagine trying to patch up a silk lace with a piece of rough string. It just wouldn't do. One quirky tidbit: some very early medieval shoes, particularly those from Viking settlements, have been found with evidence of lacing that extended not just over the foot but sometimes around the sole itself, providing extra reinforcement and protection in harsh environments. This was a truly rugged approach to footwear. It's like putting extra straps on your hiking boots, but for a whole different era. Historians still debate the influence of monastic communities on shoemaking and lacing. Monks, who often engaged in various crafts, might have developed specific techniques or perpetuated certain styles, particularly for their own austere footwear. Did their practical approach to shoemaking inadvertently influence broader trends, or were their designs largely isolated within their cloisters? It's a quiet corner of historical inquiry, but an important one. You see a group of traveling entertainers, their costumes bright and their movements agile. Their soft, flexible shoes are secured with simple crisscross lacing, allowing for freedom of movement during their performances. Functionality is key here, and elaborate, restrictive laces would hinder their craft. It's a reminder that practical needs often trumped pure aesthetics. One mainstream historical fact is that the medieval period saw a gradual increase in literacy and the creation of more written records, including accounts of daily life and even fashion. While not as detailed as modern fashion magazines, these records, alongside archaeological finds and visual representations, provide invaluable insights into the evolution of shoelaces and other aspects of medieval dress. It's like finding old-fashioned blogs, but on parchment. You observe a pair of very sturdy, perhaps even slightly armored, boots worn by a city guard. The laces are thick and robust, probably made of multiple strands of braided leather, designed for maximum security and durability during long patrols. They look like they could withstand a minor skirmish. You can almost feel the weight and rigidity of the leather. The moon climbs higher, casting long, ethereal shadows across the cobblestones, and your thoughts drift further into the intricate world of medieval shoelaces. Having considered the broad strokes, you now focus on the subtle artistry and precision that went into these seemingly simple fasteners. It wasn't just about punching holes. It was about the kind of holes and the way the laces were threaded through them. You begin to appreciate the difference between a rough, quickly made hole and a carefully reinforced eyelet. This distinction often spoke volumes about the skill of the shoemaker and the quality of the shoe itself. A shoddy hole could quickly unravel the entire fastening system, much like a loose thread in a garment. You notice how the number and placement of eyelets varied widely. Some shoes might have only 2 or 3, providing a basic closure, while others, particularly taller boots, could feature a dozen or more, extending far up the ankle. This not only provided a more secure fit, but also allowed for a more elaborate lacing pattern, turning a functional element into a decorative one. Imagine having to thread a dozen tiny holes every morning, especially if you were in a hurry. You'd probably just give up and wear slippers. One quirky tidbit: in some regions, specific lacing patterns might have been associated with particular trades or guilds. A baker, for example, might have had a slightly different lacing style on his boots than a weaver, a subtle visual cue that identified their profession. This was a form of non-verbal communication, a quiet uniform worn on the feet. Historians still debate the symbolism, if any, attached to specific knots or lacing styles. While some scholars suggest certain knots might have conveyed messages or signified affiliations, concrete evidence is scarce, leaving much to interpretation and educated guesswork. Was there a secret handshake for shoelaces? Probably not, but it's fun to imagine. You see a pair of elegant indoor slippers, likely worn by a wealthy lady, made of soft velvet or silk. These slippers might have featured delicate ribbon ties rather than sturdy leather laces, reflecting their purpose for indoor wear and their status as luxury items. They are clearly not meant for walking through muddy streets. It's like wearing fancy bedroom slippers. One mainstream historical fact is that the overall shape and style of medieval footwear evolved considerably over the centuries, moving from simpler, more rounded toes to the famously long and pointed poolings of the late Middle Ages, and then back to broader, more duckbill shapes. Each shift in shoe silhouette necessitated corresponding adjustments in lacing design and placement. A shoe with a radically different toe shape would require a different approach to securing the upper. You observe a master shoemaker, his hands calloused from years of working leather. He is meticulously burnishing the edges of a newly cut leather thong, making it smooth and less prone to fraying. This attention to detail, even for a seemingly minor component like a shoelace, speaks to the craftsmanship of the era. You can almost feel the smooth, polished surface of the lace as he finishes it. The deep quiet of the night is now complete, fostering a sense of peaceful reflection as you continue your quiet journey through the subtle history of medieval shoelaces. We've explored their practicalities, their social statements, and their materials. Now, let's consider the surprising role they played in connecting the shoe to the foot, beyond just keeping it on. You begin to understand that the lace wasn't always a simple strip. It could be a sophisticated system of securing that integrated with the structure of the shoe itself. Imagine the laces not just as fasteners, but as extensions of the shoe's design, almost like a second skin. You consider the evolution of the fastening point. While a simple bow was common, more secure knots might have been favored for active wear. For dressier shoes, the knot itself could be a decorative element, tied in an elaborate bow or hidden beneath a flap. This attention to how the lace terminated was another subtle indicator of the shoe's purpose and the wearer's status. You wouldn't want a messy knot ruining the look of your expensive shoes. One quirky tidbit is the use of lacing hooks in some later medieval and early modern shoes. These were small metal hooks, often made of brass or steel, that were attached to the upper of the shoe, around which the laces were wrapped and secured. This was a precursor to modern speed lacing systems, designed to make putting on and taking off shoes quicker and easier. It's like a very early version of a quick-release mechanism. Historians still debate the influence of climatic conditions on shoelace design. In colder, wetter climates, were laces designed to be thicker and more resistant to moisture. In warmer climates, were lighter, more breathable lacing materials preferred. The practical demands of weather certainly would have played a role, though direct evidence is often hard to come by. It's like trying to figure out if people wore flip-flops more in hot countries centuries ago. You see a pair of robust hunting boots, clearly designed for traversing rough terrain. The laces are exceptionally strong, probably made of multiple layers of braided leather, and they are tightly secured with a knot that looks impossible to untie quickly. These are shoes that are meant to stay on, no matter what. You can almost hear the rustle of leaves as the hunter walks through the forest. One mainstream historical fact is that medieval shoes, unlike many modern ones, were often made without a distinct right or left foot. They were straight, lasted, meaning the shoe could be worn on either foot. This would have simplified shoemaking, but also meant that laces, once tied, might need to be adjusted slightly to accommodate the wearer's foot, as the shoe would gradually conform to the foot with wear. Imagine wearing a shoe that feels the same on either foot. You observe a group of villagers gathered for a local festival. Their footwear is a mix of simple, practical designs, often secured with simple thongs or toggles. There's a genuine ease to their attire, reflecting a life deeply connected to the land and its rhythms. You can almost feel the soft, worn leather against their feet as they move through the festivities. You realize that for most people, the shoelace was an unremarked upon part of daily life, a humble but essential component that allowed them to go about their business, often without a second thought. It was the background hum of their existence. The deep, comforting silence of the night wraps around you as you continue to delve into the subtle complexities of medieval shoelaces. We've explored their form and function. Now let's consider their role in the overall aesthetic of medieval fashion. It wasn't just about securing the shoe. It was about completing an ensemble, adding that final, often understated, touch. You begin to appreciate how the choice of lace, its material, its color, its method of tying, could subtly elevate or define an entire outfit. Imagine a rich velvet gown paired with simple, rough leather laces. It would simply feel wrong. You consider the emergence of specific lacing patterns that became fashionable. While simple crisscross lacing remained common, more intricate patterns, such as ladder lacing or straight bar lacing, though less common in this period, would have added a sophisticated visual element. These patterns, often requiring more holes and a longer lace, demonstrated a greater investment of time and material, thus signaling higher status. It's like the difference between tying your laces in a simple bow and creating an elaborate decorative knot. One is purely functional, the other is a statement. One quirky tidbit: some medieval illustrations depict shoes with what appear to be decorative eyes or loops on the upper, through which a lace or strap could be threaded. These were not always functional eyelets in the modern sense, but artistic embellishments that could be integrated into the lacing system. It's like adding extra ornamental loops to your shoe for no other reason than they look good. Historians still debate the relative influence of external factors, such as invasions or major social upheavals, on the evolution of shoelace design. Did periods of warfare lead to more robust, utilitarian lacing, or did they have little impact on what was essentially a civilian fashion trend? The pace of change in medieval fashion was often slow, but external pressures could undoubtedly accelerate or alter trends. It's like trying to figure out if a war influenced people's hairstyles. You see a group of young noblemen, their attire fashionable and their movements confident. Their shoes are of fine leather, and the laces are almost certainly of silk, tied in a neat, decorative bow that accentuates the elegant lines of their footwear. These are not merely shoes. They are statements of their refined taste and privileged position. They're practically works of art for their feet. One mainstream historical fact is that the development of specialized shops and artisans in medieval towns led to greater refinement in many crafts, including shoemaking. This division of labor meant that shoemakers could focus on perfecting their craft, leading to higher quality shoes, and by extension, better made and more diverse lacing options. No longer was everyone making their own shoes. Expertise was becoming concentrated. You observe a traveling peddler, his cart laden with various goods. Among them are small bundles of colorful threads and narrow strips of leather, clearly intended for use as laces. This suggests a burgeoning market for separate lace components, allowing individuals to customize or repair their shoes even if they couldn't afford a new pair from a master shoemaker. It's like a medieval haberdashery on wheels. You can almost hear the soft creak of his cart as he moves through the quiet lanes. The world outside is now perfectly still, a silent stage for your mind's gentle journey through the history of medieval shoelaces. Having touched upon their aesthetic role, let's consider the practical implications of a well-designed versus a poorly designed lacing system. The medieval world was one of constant movement, often over uneven and unforgiving terrain, and a secure shoe was paramount for both comfort and safety. You begin to appreciate that a good lace wasn't just about keeping the shoe on. It was about preventing injuries, providing support, and enduring the daily grind. Imagine tripping because your shoelace came undone on a muddy path. It could lead to a nasty fall. You consider the types of activities that would demand specific lacing characteristics. A farmer working in the fields would need laces that were durable and easily cleaned, perhaps thicker and less prone to snapping. A dancer or performer, on the other hand, might prioritize flexibility and a secure, yet adaptable, fit, opting for softer, more pliable laces that allowed for a wide range of motion. It's like choosing between hiking boots and ballet slippers. The laces would be completely different. One quirky tidbit: in some instances, medieval shoes were designed with a detachable sole, which could be laced onto the upper, allowing for easier repair or even the swapping out of soles for different conditions. This modularity would have required a particularly robust and secure lacing system to ensure the sole didn't detach mid-stride. Imagine your sole falling off while you're walking. You'd be hopping all the way home. Historians still debate the efficacy of various lacing techniques in different weather conditions. Did certain lacing patterns offer better protection against snow or rain by creating a tighter seal? Or was the material of the shoe itself the primary determinant? The subtle interplay between lacing and environmental protection is a fascinating area of speculation. It's like trying to figure out if crossing your laces makes your feet warmer. You see a pair of sturdy, well-maintained leather boots belonging to a forest warden. The laces are clearly custom-made, perhaps from twisted animal sinew, providing incredible strength and resistance to moisture. These boots are a testament to the harsh realities of their owner's profession and the need for reliable equipment. They look like they could withstand a bear attack. One mainstream historical fact is that the concept of fast fashion was entirely absent in the Middle Ages. Clothing, and especially footwear, was a significant investment of time, resources, and skill. Shoes were expected to last, to be repaired, and to serve their purpose for many years, making the durability of components like shoelaces absolutely critical. You wouldn't just throw them away after a few wears. You observe a small group of children playing a vigorous game of tag in a dusty courtyard. Their simple shoes, though perhaps showing signs of wear, are securely laced, allowing them to run and jump without hindrance. It's a vivid illustration of the everyday importance of a well-secured shoe, even for the youngest members of society. You can almost hear their joyful shouts and the soft thud of their running feet. The gentle embrace of the night deepens, inviting a sense of peaceful reflection as you continue your quiet contemplation of medieval shoelaces. We've explored their function, their fashion, and their form. Now, let's consider the surprising longevity of certain lacing techniques and how some medieval solutions continue to resonate, even in subtle ways, in modern footwear. You begin to appreciate that innovation isn't always about inventing something entirely new. Sometimes, it's about refining and adapting existing concepts. The medieval shoelace, in its various iterations, laid much of the groundwork for what you see on your own feet today. You consider the basic crisscross lacing pattern. While often taken for granted, this simple yet effective method of threading a lace through opposing eyelets was already well established in the Middle Ages. Its enduring popularity speaks to its inherent practicality and effectiveness in distributing tension evenly across the foot. It's a classic for a reason, like a good old-fashioned folk song that never goes out of style. One quirky tidbit: some medieval shoes, particularly those from archaeological digs, show evidence of laces being tied in elaborate, almost knot-heart-like patterns. While these might have been purely decorative, they also suggest a level of personal expression through lacing that goes beyond mere functionality. Imagine someone carefully crafting a miniature macrame masterpiece on their feet. Historians still debate the extent to which occupational hazards influenced shoelace design. For instance, did shoemakers working in wet environments develop specific lacing styles that would help keep their feet dry? Or did the general design of the shoe itself play a more significant role? The interplay between work conditions and practical design is a fascinating area of historical inquiry. It's like trying to figure out if chefs wore specific aprons for particular cooking styles. You see a pair of beautifully preserved, leather-bound books in a monastic library, and in an illuminated manuscript, you spot a detailed illustration of a cobbler at work. The shoes he is working on clearly show early forms of reinforced eyelets and robust leather laces. This visual evidence provides invaluable insights into the craftsmanship and techniques of the time. It's like finding a centuries-old fashion magazine. One mainstream historical fact is that the medieval period saw a significant increase in urban populations and the development of specialized trades, including a burgeoning shoemaking industry. This rise in demand led to greater efficiency and innovation in footwear production, including the refinement of lacing techniques. More people meant more feet, and more feet meant more shoes, and more shoes meant more laces. You observe a group of children playing near a stream, their shoes kicked off, their feet bare in the cool water. It's a moment of simple joy, a break from the constant need to secure and protect their feet. But then, as the sun begins to set, they retrieve their shoes and with practiced ease, relace them for the walk home. It's a reminder of the daily, unspoken contract between person and footwear, a relationship mediated by the humble shoelace. You can almost feel the refreshing coolness of the stream on their bare feet. The world outside is hushed and still, a perfect backdrop for your continued, gentle exploration of medieval shoelaces. We've covered their breadth and depth. Now let's focus on the subtle power dynamics embedded within their seemingly simple form. The way a shoe was laced could communicate messages about power, authority, and even rebellion, often without a single word being spoken. You begin to understand that even the smallest details of dress were laden with meaning in a society where visual cues were paramount. Imagine a knight, his armor polished, his boots impeccably laced. It would convey a sense of discipline and readiness. You consider the differences in lacing styles between various social strata, not just in terms of material but in the very act of lacing. For the nobility, the act of putting on shoes and lacing them might have been a leisurely, almost ceremonial process, perhaps even performed by servants. For a peasant, it was a quick, necessary action, often done on the go. This difference in routine speaks volumes about the rhythms of their lives. One quirky tidbit. Some medieval texts allude to instances where loose or untied laces were seen as a sign of slovenliness or even moral laxity, particularly for those in positions of responsibility. Conversely, perfectly tied laces could indicate diligence and attention to detail. So, your laces could actually be a reflection of your character. Historians still debate the extent to which medieval shoemakers adapted their lacing techniques based on client requests. Did wealthy patrons demand specific, intricate lacing patterns, or did shoemakers largely adhere to established traditions and regional styles? The balance between individual preference and established craft practices is a complex historical puzzle. It's like trying to figure out if someone could order a bespoke shoelace. You see a king depicted in a richly illuminated manuscript, his regal robes flowing, his feet encased in shoes of unimaginable luxury. The laces are not just silk, but perhaps interwoven with threads of gold, tied in a knot of exquisite complexity. These are laces designed to impress, to proclaim majesty, a visible symbol of his power and status. They're basically royal accessories for your feet. One mainstream historical fact is that the Middle Ages were a period of significant social change, with the rise of a merchant class and increasing urbanization. This created new opportunities for fashion expression, as wealth began to accumulate outside the traditional aristocracy. This, in turn, spurred innovation in shoemaking and lacing, as new groups sought to express their status through their attire. You observe a group of farmers, their hands rough, their faces weathered by the sun. Their sturdy, practical boots are secured with thick, simple leather thongs, tied in no-nonsense knots that will hold up to a long day of labor in the fields. There's a genuine honesty in their footwear, a direct reflection of their hardworking lives. You can almost smell the earth clinging to their boots. The quiet peace of the night now feels almost profound, a perfect canvas for your final, gentle delves into the world of medieval shoelaces. We've explored their technical evolution, their social significance, and their subtle aesthetic impact. Now, let's consider the environmental and sustainability aspects of medieval lacing, a perspective often overlooked but deeply relevant to the time. You begin to appreciate that in an era without mass production, every component, including the humble shoelace, was valued and often recycled or repurposed. This was a world where nothing was truly disposable. You consider the process of replacing a broken lace. For most, it wasn't a matter of simply buying a new pair from a store. It might involve cutting a strip from a scrap of leather, unraveling a piece of worn rope, or carefully braiding new fibers. This resourcefulness was a cornerstone of medieval life, and the shoelace in its very simplicity embodies this ethos. Imagine having to make your own shoelaces. It would certainly make you appreciate them more. One quirky tidbit, Archaeological. Digs have sometimes uncovered caches of discarded shoelaces, often found near shoemakers' workshops or tanneries. These fragments, though seemingly insignificant, provide invaluable clues about the materials, techniques, and even popular colors of laces from centuries ago. They are tiny historical treasures. Historians still debate the specific types of knots used for medieval shoelaces. While simple overhand knots and bows were undoubtedly common, were there more complex, specialized knots used for particular purposes or by specific trades? The study of historical knot tying is a niche but fascinating area of research. It's like trying to decipher an ancient language, but with string. You see a small, well-worn satchel hanging from a hook in a cobbler's shop. Inside, you glimpse various scraps of leather, lengths of strong twine, and even some repurposed bits of fabric, all ready to be fashioned into new laces or used for repairs. This is a testament to the efficient use of resources and the value placed on every usable material. It's a medieval recycling center, but for shoes. One mainstream historical fact is that the medieval economy was largely based on local production and trade, with raw materials often sourced from nearby areas. This meant that the types of materials available for shoelaces varied geographically, influencing regional lacing traditions. A region rich in flax would naturally produce more linen laces. For example, you observe a young boy carefully relacing his father's sturdy work boots. His small fingers work slowly but with concentration, demonstrating the learned skill and the inherent value of the boots to his family. It's a quiet moment of intergenerational knowledge transfer, a simple act passed down through the ages. You can almost feel the rough texture of the leather as he threads the lace. The medieval night is now a tapestry of shadows and soft whispers, and your contemplation of medieval shoelaces continues, gentle and expansive. We've journeyed through their practicalities and their place in society. Now, let's consider their surprising longevity as a fastening mechanism, persisting through centuries despite the emergence of other options. You begin to understand that the shoelace, in its fundamental simplicity, possessed an enduring efficacy that transcended fleeting fashion trends and technological shifts. Imagine a design that has remained essentially unchanged for hundreds of years. You consider the sheer adaptability of the shoelace. It could be thick or thin, long or short, plain or decorative, adapting to a vast array of shoe styles and purposes. This versatility made it a perennial favorite for shoemakers and wearers alike. It's like a timeless piece of clothing that can be dressed up or down. One quirky tidbit: some medieval paintings and tapestries depict figures with unusually elaborate lacing that seems almost impossible to replicate in real life, suggesting that artistic license was sometimes taken, or that these were highly idealized representations of fashion. So, not everything you see in medieval art was a direct reflection of reality. Sometimes it was a bit of artistic exaggeration. Historians still debate the exact moment when the modern shoelace, with its round or flat braided cord and sealed aglets, truly emerged. While precursors existed throughout the medieval period, the widespread availability of factory-produced laces in the post-medieval era marked a significant turning point. It's like trying to pinpoint the exact moment a new technology becomes ubiquitous. You see a pair of child's shoes, preserved carefully in a museum display. Though worn, the small, evenly spaced eyelets and the remnants of a fine leather thong are still visible, a tangible link to a young life lived centuries ago. These small details speak volumes about the everyday realities of the past. They're like little time capsules for your feet. One mainstream historical fact is that while lacing was dominant for much of the medieval period, other fastening methods like buckles and toggles also existed and gained popularity at various times. The shift in prominence between these different fasteners was often driven by fashion, practicality, and the availability of materials and metalworking techniques. It was a constant competition for your feet. You observe a group of villagers gathered around a storyteller, their attention captivated by his tales. Their shoes, a mix of styles and fastenings, are quietly resting on the ground, a silent testament to the countless journeys they've undertaken. You can almost hear the rhythmic cadence of the storyteller's voice, a soothing backdrop to the scene. You realize that the story of the shoelace is not just about a piece of string. It's about movement, daily life, work, play, and the countless steps taken by generations long past. The deep, comforting quiet of the night continues its gentle embrace, and your final, soft thoughts and medieval shoelaces begin to coalesce. We've traced their story from practicality to prestige, from simple thongs to intricate designs. Now, let's consider their legacy and how these seemingly humble fasteners foreshadowed the complex world of footwear we inhabit today. You begin to appreciate that the foundations of modern shoe design, including the very concept of a lace-up shoe, were firmly laid in the medieval era. It was a slow, steady building of innovation, one lace at a time. You consider the idea of individualization. While mass production was centuries away, the ability to choose your own laces, or to have a shoemaker craft them to your specifications, offered a subtle form of personal expression. It was a small but significant way to make your mark on an otherwise utilitarian item. It's like adding a personal touch to your belongings, even if it's just a unique phone case. One quirky tidbit: some medieval shoes, especially those designed for specific sporting activities like hunting or early forms of football, might have featured particularly robust lacing systems, or even additional strapping to ensure maximum ankle support and stability during strenuous exertion. Imagine a medieval athlete trying to keep their shoes on during a particularly rough game. Historians still debate the extent to which aesthetic considerations drove innovation in lacing. Was it primarily the desire for more beautiful or elaborate shoes that led to new lacing techniques, or did practical improvements come first, and then aesthetic opportunities were explored? It's a classic chicken and egg scenario, but for footwear. You see a detailed illustration of a medieval knight, fully armored, his formidable boots clearly showing a system of robust lacing and straps designed to integrate seamlessly with his leg armor. These are not just boots. They are part of a complete functional ensemble designed for combat and protection. They're like an extension of his armor. One mainstream historical fact is that the Middle Ages were a period of technological advancement, albeit at a slower pace than later eras. Innovations in metallurgy, leatherworking, and textile production all indirectly contributed to the evolution of shoelaces, allowing for stronger, more durable, and more aesthetically pleasing options. You observe a child carefully tying a knot in a piece of string, practicing a skill that would have been essential for securing their own shoes and countless other items in medieval life. It's a timeless act, a fundamental human connection to the world of knots and ties. You can almost feel the smooth string between their small fingers. You realize that the humble shoelace, often taken for granted in your own life, was a testament to medieval ingenuity, resourcefulness, and the enduring human desire to make daily life a little more secure, a little more comfortable, and sometimes a little more beautiful. The final moments of our shared medieval night are here, and your mind settles into a calm appreciation for the enduring story of medieval shoelaces. We've completed our journey, from the crudest thongs to the most elegant silken ties. Now, let's reflect on the ultimate legacy of these simple fasteners and how they silently paved the way for the intricate and varied footwear of today. You begin to understand that even the most complex modern lacing systems owe a debt to the foundational ideas developed centuries ago. It's a continuum of human invention, stretching back through time. You consider the subtle art of the shoemaker, who understood not just how to construct a shoe, but also how to integrate the lacing system for optimal fit and aesthetics. This holistic approach to design was a hallmark of medieval craftsmanship, where every element was considered in relation to the whole. It's like a master chef who understands how all the ingredients work together to create a perfect dish. One quirky tidbit: some medieval texts, particularly those detailing household inventories, occasionally list laces as separate valuable items, suggesting they were sometimes considered significant enough to be individually recorded, especially if they were made of precious materials. So, your shoelaces could have been a prized possession. Historians still debate the degree of influence that different cultural centers had on the widespread adoption of specific lacing styles. Did certain fashion trends originate in the royal courts and then trickle down to the wider populace? Or were innovations sometimes born from practical necessity among the common folk and then adopted by the elite? It's a fascinating interplay of top-down and bottom-up influences. You see in your mind's eye the entire sweep of medieval shoelace evolution. The simple leather thong of the early peasant, the intricately woven silk laces of the nobleman, the robust ties of the soldier, the delicate ribbons of the courtier. Each represents a facet of medieval life, a snapshot of its practicalities and its aspirations. They are like tiny threads connecting different moments in history. One mainstream historical fact is that the concept of mass production was entirely foreign to the medieval world. Each shoe, and often each lace, was individually crafted, reflecting the hand of the artisan and the specific needs of the wearer. This bespoke approach meant a greater degree of customization and attention to detail than is often found in modern, industrialized footwear. You observe a single, perfectly preserved leather shoelace from an archaeological find, perhaps from the 14th century. It lies in a museum display, seemingly insignificant, yet you now understand the rich tapestry of history it represents. The human foot, the daily journey, the desire for comfort and expression, all tied together by this simple, yet profoundly important piece of material. You can almost feel the worn leather, the texture of a forgotten life. So, as the last remnants of our medieval night begin to fade, allow your mind to gently unwind from the intricate details of shoelaces and settle into a space of tranquil calm. Imagine the quiet, rhythmic breathing of the world around you, a soft, steady rhythm that mirrors your own. Let go of any lingering thoughts or worries, allowing them to drift away like wisps of smoke on a still evening. Your journey through the past is complete, and now it's time to ease into the gentle embrace of the present moment, a cocoon of comfort and peace. Feel the soft warmth of your bed, the gentle pressure of the blankets, supporting you as you drift deeper into relaxation. The subtle hum of the night, perhaps the distant murmur of the wind, or the soft whir of a fan, becomes a soothing soundtrack to your descent into slumber. There's nothing left to do, nowhere left to be but here in this quiet, restful space. Allow your muscles to soften, your breath to deepen, and your mind to become still, a calm lake reflecting the moonlight. Just rest.